Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast. I am your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes, as also the administrator at the Internet's Sake Discord and Reddit's r/sake community.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai. I'm the director of education at the Sake Studies Center, and I'm also the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
Tim, you adjusted your intro a little bit. I like that.
Just a little.
You know, as the resume changes, so must, or as the resume gathers new items, so must the intro change.
And you know I don't like to change my script, right?
No, you don't like to change your script at all. That must have caused crippling anxiety for you.
We got through it together.
Oh, nice. So how are things? Good?
Things are good, and I'm excited for today. We're going to be talking about a place in Japan I pretty much know nothing about, so that's good.
Well, it's a place in Japan I know very little about, so that works out.
What are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about Oita Prefecture.
Ooh, a prefecture profile. I like that.
Yeah, we're gonna do what we call them, the prefecture deep dive. But not too deep.
Not too deep.
Neither of us have spent an appreciable amount of time there. I was there for a whopping 2 days last year. So I think that my own ability to speak with authority might be limited. How about you?
Oh, I don't know much about Oita at all. I think we're going to need to phone a friend on this one.
All right. Do we have one handy?
We do. Let me introduce our good buddy and Sake Revolution alumni, Chris Johnson. He is the National Sales Manager for World Sake Imports and also world-renowned as the Sake Ninja. Chris first appeared on Sake Revolution in May of 2020 in episode 8, back when we didn't know what we were doing, and we still don't.
I was about to say, like, wait, what changed?
And CJ was also a very special guest on our 100th episode in March 2022. So with that, let's welcome CJ, Chris Johnson, to the episode. Hey, Chris.
Hello. Very excited to be joining you again for this exciting opportunity.
Yeah.
Should be fun to go down the path of Oita and its exciting stories. I don't know if I know all the history, but I do personally have quite a bit of history in the prefecture.
Yeah, you have plenty of history there. So can you tell our listeners what your history entails?
Well, I was on a program called the JET program, which is an exchange and teaching program set up by the Japanese government. And I, like almost everyone who applies, said, I want to be in the countryside of Kyoto. And all I think they heard was countryside, because I ended up in the countryside of Oita again. And I lived there for 3 years and dug in and loved all of it. And pretty much did anything you could imagine when it came to Oita and its existence. So pretty fun.
Can I ask you, what was your first thought when you opened the letter and it said you're going to Oita Prefecture?
I mean, keeping it PG, it was where is that place?
Did you reach for a map right away?
I went and immediately searched for a map, and it, because we're old, we didn't have these things called cell phones at the time, so I couldn't just quickly Google it. I had to, sit down and try and figure out where this place was. I actually also phoned a friend and asked a family friend who lived in Tokyo. I was like, talk to me about this Oita Kusumachi place, and they went, we know nothing.
So for everybody at home, Oita is located in Kyushu, so on Kyushu Island, and then southern Japan, and it's pretty much the easternmost part of the island, if I'm not horribly mistaken. Is that right?
Kept me in the Northeast. Yeah. Just it was a different part of the Northeast.
So yeah. Chris, can you give us the Cliff Notes version of Oita? Like, what is it famous for? What should people know about it?
So it's famous for quite a few things, actually. But one of the main things is that it is onsen heavy. The onsen, quote unquote, onsen capital of the world, Beppu, is right there in Oita, where they have the 7 pools of hell. I don't know if that
Oh,
sounds as attractive as I
I'm
just made
sorry.
it sound, but it's
Sounds
what
One
they
moment,
call
lovely.
it.
please. We need to rewind. Seven pools of hell,
Yes, yes,
and that's
because
what
they're
they're
all
calling it.
yeah. The
As
hot springs, they have different take a path up to all the different experiences. One's blue, one's red. It's fairly exciting, but yeah, they're it to me when I always went to it, I felt like Beppu was the Vegas of onsen because I had lived out in the countryside. So when I first learned about hot springs, it was like actual like outdoor or a little bit more. You went into this old hut in this old house and all these, the
Mhm.
wonderful aspects of what we've come to know as ryokan and onsen. And in Beppu, it's big flashing lights and gigantic pools and neon signs and all sorts of fun things like that. So that's one of the things it's quite well known for. It is also known for shime saba and the actually amazing mackerel
Ooh.
that is there. They have great blowfish
Mhm.
and nature, right? So it's another thing that's very much so a component of Oita. Beautiful changing of leaves. In the town I lived in, there used to be a road not that far down the street from where I lived that people would drive from hours away just to sit in traffic. That's literally a 20-minute drive that would take them 4 hours to get through just to see the different colors of leaves in this one area.
Oh
So
wow.
lots of fun. Oita is also known for one of the few places historically that made both shochu, because that's a Kyushu thing, as well as sake, because we had just enough cold weather and good snow melt to be able to create fantastic sake.
Could you give us a quick uh, differentiation between what shochu is versus what sake is for our listeners who may not be familiar?
Sure. Well, I'm pretty sure you all know what sake is based on the number of
Yes.
episodes that you have listened to by these two fantastic gentlemen. But the big difference between the two is that shochu is our distilled spirit, and it can be made from multiple different bases. It's pretty much anything that has starch and or naturally occurring sugar can become a shochu. The one thing that gives a parallel between the two is that both of them must use koji. So the difference being that it's a ferment like sake that then can become an alcohol once it's distilled. So we do have shochus that have been made from a sake base, but you can make from carrots and brown sugar and sweet potato and other potatoes and barley and grains and all sorts of fun things. So it's very different, but intriguing that we had both in the same area. And so I got to experience both of those items quite often as a young individual venturing into the world of Japanese culture when I first went there to teach English. And to understand how far in the countryside I was, uh, when we got picked up from the plane flying down from our orientation in Tokyo, all the other new jets got swept away into Oita City for a meeting and a couple more days of getting to know each other. I got picked up by two people that did not speak English, and then they drove me to my town. And 2.5 hours later, after driving through mountains and tunnels and valleys and more mountains and more tunnels and more valleys, and it just got farther and farther into the countryside. And then they were like, "We're here." And that's where I live.
No.
Mountains and tunnels are making me think that they figured you were a flight risk and they had to prevent it.
Yeah. They wanted to make sure I got stuck in the town. I couldn't get out.
That's interesting. I didn't see that coming. And then you said you were over there for what, 3 years? You said
Yes, 3 years. I went for a 1 year contract and then just kind of fell in love with the situation and didn't think I was done with doing what I was there to do, which was get everybody to know me as Chris instead of Gaijin and the barbarian foreigner, as some of you have all gotten to notice from the Shogun recent production that was out there. So that I felt that the year 3 was when I finally had accomplished said goals. And was just another human who drank a lot of sake when I lived there.
So you were introduced to sake when you were there?
I was. However, introduction is very different than like in the sense of I was introduced to it, but I wasn't introduced to what sake is today and what we all understand of the daiginjos and ginjos. I was drinking beautifully made sake, but it was at office parties, and I was often invited to every office party. And so part of that culture was to share a drink with your coworkers and have as many drinks as your superior or senpai wants you to partake in. So there was just a lot of me wandering around circles of 20 plus individuals at a party and just sitting and drinking with all of them. And we drank, again, perfectly wonderful sake, but it was all futsushu. So I did not know the quality of things that were out there until I basically left. In the third year, right before I left, I got exposed to some beautiful stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us that story. That's your aha moment.
Yes.
Was right when you were on the way out. Is that right?
On the way out, you're getting rid of
What
me.
happened?
So
What happened?
again, after years of drinking sake, I didn't despise it in any way, shape, or form, but it was just a beverage that got us to the next stage of the evening, right? Start with sake, go to beer, end up in some sort of other space, depending on how many kais we had, ichikai, nijikai, sanjikai, yojikai, all those fun numbers of parties as you build through them. We had gotten to year 3. I was leaving. I was at my farewell party and had a whole bunch of people there. It was a big celebration, and they brought me a beautiful, big 1.8 liter sake wrapped in a gigantic box with bows, and it was wood, and it was a Junmai Daiginjo from Yatsushika Shuzo, which is a brewery just in the next town where I lived, also in Oita. And I looked at it and I went, sake. I've just packed up 3 years of stuff, and every school that I taught at 7 schools. Everybody gave me letters and pictures and items. So there was just, I'd already packed a lot. And I'm like, how am I going to fit this ginormous 1.8 liter in a box back home with me? And I'm on stage at the point, and my mom's little voice jumps in my head and says, "This is such a wonderful gift. We should share it with everybody." And so I was like, this is so great. We should all do it. Let's all pour out a kanpai. I said a little speech, took a sip of the sake. It was like, don't finish it. Give me some of that back, because it was absolutely amazing. And I was like, oh, wow, I need to learn more about this beverage. And I left 3 days later and started my true path of sake back here in the United States.
Nice.
So when you landed back in the States, like echoes of that delicious flavor were lingering in your mind, and you're like, I gotta study more about that.
Exactly. And then started a job about 2 weeks after I got home at a small restaurant in Midtown called Katsuhama. And they had 5 sakes on their list. And that was the beginning of the tour of just tasting and experiencing, and kept going from 1996 all the way till today.
You're known as the sake ninja, but I understand you also had a few experiences in Oita where perhaps you could have wound up as the sake sumo wrestler.
Yeah, this is very true. There is this fact that I did sumo wrestle and I did drink sake on the same evening, so I could have become the sake sumo samurai something. I don't know. We'll figure out what it is.
Sake sumo samurai.
Yeah. So
why were you doing? How did that happen? Why were you doing sumo wrestling? How did that happen?
One of the many traditions in the small town that I lived in, and is that when you join the town office every year, the first year members of the town office must participate in a 300-plus-year-old sumo tournament in one of the small little villages that are part of the overall town. And I met 2 people on the first day that I rolled into the office, and they came up to me in their best English, and I did not speak Japanese at the time. And they said, "Chris, you like sumo?" And I said, "Yes. I don't really know what sumo is, but of course I love it. It's fantastic. Those are big guys that push each other around, right? Yeah, sure, I love it." Did not see those 2 guys until October. Again, this was in the end of August or end of July, I guess. I didn't see those 2 individuals again until October 29th. And they came in and they handed me a little big blue book, which is what they do in Japan, the little blue books. And now I could read my name, and I saw my name, and they said, "Sumo tournament, Chris-san, sub-captain, practice tonight." And the tournament was the 30th and the 31st every year. And so I went in and practiced that night, learning how to be a sumo wrestler per se. And those of you who might know me, I am a lot heavier than I was when I lived in Japan. And so I was probably 175, 180 pounds, sweaty and soaking wet. And they put me into these.
You're like 6'2", right?
Six foot 1, yeah. So a fairly tall person and a very skinny one. And so sumo was an interesting yet fantastic event, but it was super fun. It was amazing. I can tell you that when you're not a pro, the little mawashi, which are the kind of outfits you wear are made out of canvas, and they are nowhere near as comfortable as one might think they'd be. I know they look very comfortable when you see them on TV, but they're not. And we wrestled. We did it, and had so much fun. I laughed. I called friends, and then for the next 2 years, I invited foreigners, and we had a foreigner team. And then the third year, we had 2 foreigner teams come in and actually participate in this tournament. And it was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. I have a photo somewhere of me against my very first opponent, and he's probably in junior high school, but he's 265 pounds on his way to go to Tokyo to be a part of an actual sumo beya. Like, he was becoming a sumo wrestler, and I was the first person that I ever fought in an actual sumo ring. And I kind of remember the guy saying go, and then I looked up and I was on my back outside the ring. So that was fun.
Well, if we can locate that picture, we have to get it in the show notes.
I have it somewhere.
Okay. Show notes.
I have it somewhere. I just have to find it.
Yeah.
So sumo was very exciting. I did get to participate in pretty much every sport you could imagine that ever happened in that town. So another exciting sake-related tradition was that on the baseball team, the same rookies would have to drink out of a 1.8 liter bottle as much as they can, right, to show how much they could participate in the alcohol situation. I do not recommend this to all you listeners out there. This is not something you should go and try to do on your weekends. However, I did participate in said thing, and I will tell you that I drank too much of that bottle, and I did ride my bike into a rice field on the way home.
No.
To my defense, there were no lights out in the middle of the rice field, so I was riding back to my homestay family, and I misjudged the right turn that I knew was coming up. Just missed it by that much.
Wow, I think we have to list like team building into the attractions of Oita. This is amazing.
Yeah, lots of team building.
Yeah.
Lots of team building. I mean, obviously that's not the only thing that we participated in while we were there, but yes, a lot of team building.
Well, we should commence the drinking of some Oita sake that we have with us today. Yeah, it doesn't seem to me like a lot of the breweries that are over there are exporting to the U.S., unfortunately, but we do have at least one, and we've got that with us today. Tim, what is the sake we've gotten? Who's making it?
Well, I think this is especially appropriate to represent Oita because this is actually a sake that is produced by a shochu distillery that has a sub-business in sake making. So their primary business is making a really super famous shochu called Ichiko, and they have a side business, Koku no Kura, under the brand of Wakabotan. So this is Wakabotan Junmai Ginjo. John, do you want to give us the stats for this great sake?
I sure do. So, as Tim pointed out, this is from Koku no Kura Brewery. This is the Wakabotan Hinohikari 50. Now, the Hinohikari is referring to the rice type, and that is apparently table rice in Oita Prefecture in the city of Usa, where actually the brewery is located. This is a Junmai Ginjo Genshu. That Hinohikari is milled down to 50% of its original size. Your sake meter value is 0, so nice and neutral on your weight. The acidity is 1.9, which is also not too high. And the yeast in this case is Association 1801 and Association number 9.
All right.
Let's get this in the glass.
Fact that many breweries do the side business of sake production. That's similar to another producer there, Yatsushika, who makes the shochu because he knows that it sells a lot, but he does that so he can do his passion project, which is actually making the sake. And it's fairly common in Oita of the shochu because that's what everybody's or more commonly known for down in Kyushu, leads the path. But then the sake is the passion project on the side to kind of go back to the older traditions of brewing.
I see.
And Kyushu is really known as shochu country generally, but I looked it up and there's about 33 sake breweries in Oita. So it is no slouch when it comes to sake production at all.
We're one of the weird prefectures that gets a crazy amount of snow because it's still on that line of where the snow flow comes in. So we have that. There's enough elevation and enough of that really fantastic water that guides to the sake brewing, and also the cold enough winters. The town that I lived in was one of 3 in the entire prefecture where you could have a heater in the school classrooms. So that cold, as we all know from our sake studies, that winter cold is what really supports the history of sake brewing. And Oita has just enough of that to be able to have those breweries still exist.
Nice.
Oh, that's really cool to know. CJ, have you had this sake before? Are you familiar with Wakabotan?
I have had it before. I think the first time I had it, though, was here, not actually in Japan.
Yeah.
So I know Ichiko, their shochu product very well. And, we used to chant USA, USA when we drove past USA on our way to other places. So we all felt like we were at home. Just a little side note, little side story.
That's funny. It's like going to Obama, Japan, and then go to USA.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Well, let's give this a smell.
So you've got your usual ginjo notes here. You got your tropical fruit, a little bit of mango, but a little more berry, a little more on the berry side of things. But there's still some of those tropical fruits as well. It's nice. This is a very pleasant aroma. It definitely smells like something that's going to be in the John Puma wheelhouse.
Yeah, there's fruit. I think the mango thing is right there. I get like the soft star fruit type kind of things. It's not explosive tropical notes that we sometimes get out of those northern John Puma style sakes, but it is still showing up with those nice tones. And I think that berry note, like especially I just had really fresh strawberries that just got brought in from Harry's locally, and I can smell that kind of strawberry note that's reminding me of what I just smelled yesterday.
I got a little blurb off the brewery's website that this sake was developed in 2016, and they wanted to pursue a more gorgeous and fruity taste. And Hino Hikari, as you mentioned, John, is grown in large quantities on the USA plain, and it's traditionally used as an eating rice. But here they've taken it and crafted it into a very elegant and fruity style of sake. So I think it's just interesting that this sake hasn't been around for a long time, and they're really striving for that fruity flavor. Let's give it a taste. It's very smooth.
It is as advertised. That fruit comes across. I want to say it is a little bit less fruity than the aroma led me to believe it would be. But it is like making up for that by just being really nice and smooth and easy drinking, which is also something I really enjoy in a sake. So yeah, this is for me, this is a bit of a winner. I like this. Tim, you mentioned that this only came into existence in 2016. Wow. So this is a relatively new sake then. That's interesting.
And when we talk about the palate, I think it's also worth mentioning that the alcohol percentage here is 14.5%, and it's sold as a genshu. So this is, I think, brewed up to this limit, and then they stop it there. So there's some weight and a little bit of richness in the texture, but it's not a traditional genshu where it's like going to wallop you like a sumo wrestler on the USA plain.
On the USA plain. I did have some of my fellow international sumo wrestlers were based in USA and Makatsu, which are part of that USA plain. So I agree. Interesting to hear that the acidity shows up more than when we spoke about it initially. John saying 1.9, not crazy. It has this little bit of acidity. I'm getting like a soft, kind of citrusy, very soft lemon peel type note in it, which is great, especially in the finish. Like the after, like a little bit of that aftertaste is showing some of those notes.
I totally agree, CJ. That's a great note. And I think 1.9 is kind of on the higher end of that standard range of, what you might expect in a sake, so they might have bumped up that acidity a little bit. It does bring out a little citrus note on the finish. Absolutely.
I agree. 1.9 is on the
It's on the higher end, but it's
higher
not
of the
crazy.
standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have any memories of Hino Hikari from your time in Oita? I've never heard of this eating rice before.
That's one of the rices that was
Yeah.
fairly commonly used in restaurants and stuff.
Hmm.
I didn't eat it
Mm.
at home. I didn't really purchase rice because my homestay family had rice
Yeah.
that I used to harvest
Yep.
myself, and so I had access to my own rice all the time from the family, so we didn't necessarily have to buy rice per se. But I do
Mhm.
remember Hinokari as a brand out there.
Awesome.
So it was nice having my own little grandma made vegetables, and we would just whenever I
Oh my
stopped
God.
by, I'd get a little basket of things to cook with and have the rice there. But I also had to go and work on in the fields in order to get the access to said rice. So every year I did planting of the rice and harvesting of the rice and helping with the vegetables and moving things and helping grandpa and all that good stuff.
Good Lord. They kept you busy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm getting tired just hearing about it. Now, CJ, you have a long, illustrious career in restaurants as well as the sake world, and you are a very accomplished cook as well. And I wanted to know if you had any thoughts or ideas or things that might pair well with this sake. This is something that John and I talk about a lot on every episode, and it stumps
Yes.
us. It stumps us sometimes. So, any thoughts on dishes that might pair well with this lightly fruity sake from Oita?
I mean, right now, I would think moving into kind of springtime, summertime, lighter preparations of dishes like a chicken
Mm.
paillard type thing where it's just
Ooh.
pounded lightly with a nice salad on top. We actually last night I just had chicken cutlets with a Caesar salad on top, and this would crush with that. It would be
Ooh.
absolutely perfect because you have a little bit of umami from the anchovy, but then you have citrus from the lemon, and then all those kind of little balances, a little bit of fried food with sakes like this acidity is going to play off a little bit of that soft fat. So I don't think heavy dishes right now for this, but I think some lighter cooked foods would be great. Lighter side of your barbecue, pasta salad with the vegetables and things that you might serve during a barbecue on the weekends. I think that would play with pretty well.
That's such a good point. I think that just a hint of higher acidity, it's like a little squeeze of lemon on whatever you're eating. And the Caesar salad has that dressing that really coats your palate. And this sake would just cut through that the perfect amount. That's yum. That sounds really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll try and save
All
some
right.
in this bottle so I can enjoy it with lunch later. But I think, as we all know, sake is so versatile and it really can live in lots of places. But for me, when it's palate driven and fruit driven, as you kind of described here, and that genshu gives it a little bit more mid palate weight, it can stand up to
Mm.
cooked and not just soft and delicate, even though it's got that little bit of acidity. I think it plays off some of those things that we'll be doing this summer with barbecues and whatnot. I think this can show up a little bit, especially with like marinated chicken and stuff. I know a lot of people do, make a dressing and marinate the chicken in that dressing that has citrus and olive oil and garlic and whatnot. I think this would be really great with a simply grilled marinated chicken and then soft fish with herbs and a little bit of citrus and or fruit in the cavity.
Everything you just said sounds great.
Just kind of to wrap things up, what was your overall impression of Oita? Would you recommend sake lovers visit this region? Any closing thoughts on your 3 years living in Oita?
Obviously, with 33 breweries, there's a lot for a sake fan to go experience. A lot of them are those small breweries that you can only taste there. My town, Kusumachi, has Kamenroi, which is a very small sake brewery right in town, which was the sake that I drank most of the time. So I think absolutely go there. But it is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful prefecture. Fantastic hot springs, beautiful mountains, valleys. There's Aso and there's Yufuin, which is a super famous Onsen town. There's lots of history. It's really cool. Like there's all the different things you could imagine because it is a southern prefecture, but it has the mountains and it has the valleys and it has wonderful waterfalls and beautiful hikes and amazing food. You have influence from Korea and the mainland into the foods. There's a little bit more spice, a little bit more richness. So it's different from the Tohoku region and the flavor profiles there. So it is really a wonderful place to visit. So I would 100% recommend that, and to get out there and try all those things. There's lots of cool stuff.
Yeah. As CJ mentioned, Beppu is where a lot of people go to visit when they go to Oita. It is apparently the Vegas of hot spring towns. I went to the city area just to kind of get a feel for the vibe and like the local izakaya culture, and a lot of the food was really great. The local sake was fantastic. It was a really fun place to visit, and I also would recommend if you're on the lookout for a place to go while you're in Kyushu, or just trying to get some place in Japan that maybe isn't Kyoto. I think it's a really wonderful place to take a look at.
A lot of coastline, a lot of good fish, a lot of good mountains. You have both. I lived in the mountains, but there's a wonderful coastline, Kunasaki and Saiki, and just absolutely stunning. And like I said earlier, that mackerel, they catch it right there. That whole
that mackerel's good. That
Shime Saba thing. Yeah, Shime Saba thing happened right there.
Is that the Seto Inland Sea right there that it's on? Or is it Pacific Ocean? Or
I think it's the ocean, right?
It's kind of a mixture. So it's
Mixture,
Pacific mostly, but it's the Sea of Japan doesnn't quite hit where Kyushu is. It kind of, because you're getting a little bit of both, and then the Seto Inland Sea from where Shikoku is kind of hit. So it's a confluence of the different waters kind of right in there. So that gives a pretty amazing place for the fish, which is why you have such a diverse fish population there and such great seafood in Oita.
So cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Good stuff.
All right. Now, CJ, you do a lot of sake events with your work for World Sake Imports. Where can people find you online and follow you if they want to get a sense for what you're out there doing in the world for sake?
I am on the gram, as with the tag name the Sake Ninja. So you can find me on Instagram with the Sake Ninja, and that's really where I do most of my stuff.
Awesome. Sounds great. So we'll be sure to tag that in our show notes, and you can follow Chris there. Chris, thank you so much for joining us from episode 8 until today. It's so nice to have you back.
Thank you very much for having me. I am always available to hang out and chat with you two wonderful people. I enjoy it a lot, and will consistently be here to talk sake with the two of you whenever we can.
Excellent.
All right. Well, Chris and John, it was so great to taste this sake with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And CJ, we can't wait to have you back again soon. Special thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in, but a special hello, hi, and extra special thank you to our patrons. We would not be here without the wonderful support from all our patrons. And if you would like to learn more about supporting our show, you can visit patreon.com/sakerevolution to learn more.
And, well, we already told you should check out the show notes, but there's also a little shop at our website, sakerevolution.com, where you can get some Sake Revolution swag for you or the budding sake lover in your life. So you check it out and see if any of our merchandise appeals to you. So, everybody, on that note, let's grab a glass. Remember to keep drinking sake. And kanpai!